Have you ever watched your entire life get thrown away like garbage? I have. And let me tell you, there's a special kind of pain that comes with being discarded by the people you sacrificed everything for. It was a Saturday morning, one of those beautiful spring days where the sun makes everything look almost magical. We were hosting a family brunch. I'd spent hours that morning trying to be useful, trying to justify my existence in what I'd foolishly believed was my home. I arranged the fruit platters just right, set out the pastries on the good china, made sure every napkin was perfectly folded. I was trying so hard. God, I was trying so desperately hard to matter. And then she came outside. Vanessa, my daughter-in-law, the woman my son married, the woman I helped give a dream life to. She was carrying this cardboard box, and the way she held it, with her arms extended like it was contaminated, I should have known. I should have known what was coming, but I didn't, because even after 2 years of slow, systematic humiliation, part of me still wanted to believe in family. Part of me still thought love would win. I was such a fool. She walked right past me, didn't even glance in my direction, just marched across the patio where our guests were chatting and laughing, past the table I'd so carefully set, past my son Ryan, who was standing at the grill, flipping pancakes like this was just another perfect morning in paradise. And then she dumped it, right there on the driveway. She just turned that box over and let everything spill out onto the concrete, like she was taking out the trash. I watched my life scatter across that driveway. Framed photographs, pictures of my late husband holding our newborn son, images of Ryan's first day of kindergarten with his gap-toothed smile, shots from family vacations when we were still a family that loved each other, the hand-woven quilt my mother made for my wedding, every stitch a prayer, every pattern a piece of her heart that she'd given me 50 years ago. And then, tumbling out last, hitting the concrete with a crack that made my heart stop, my music box, the antique music box my husband Thomas gave me on our 20th anniversary, the one that played our song, the one I'd wound up every night for 3 years since he died, just to hear that melody and remember what it felt like to be loved. It was scratched now, damaged, broken, just like me. Vanessa stood there with her arms crossed, her designer sundress flowing in that perfect breeze, her manicured nails catching the sunlight. She looked at me with those cold, calculating eyes, the same eyes that used to smile at me when she needed something, when she wanted my money, when she was pretending to care. And she said, loud enough for every single guest to hear, "These belong in the trash, not in my living room. My living room, not our living room, my living room." Like I was nothing, like I'd never contributed a single thing, like I hadn't given them the money that bought that house, that paid for that roof, that made their perfect little life possible. I heard people gasp. Some of them laughed. That awful, uncomfortable laughter people make when they witness cruelty but don't know how to respond. Others looked away, embarrassed for me, pitying me, probably thinking, thank God that's not my mother-in-law. And Ryan, my baby boy, the son I'd raised alone while my husband worked double shifts, the boy I'd sacrificed everything for, put through college, celebrated every achievement of, loved with every fiber of my being, he stood there at that grill, spatula in hand, and said absolutely nothing. He didn't defend me, didn't stop his wife, didn't even look in my direction, just flipped another pancake, like his mother's heart wasn't being shattered into 1,000 pieces right in front of him. That's when something inside me changed. I felt my hands start to shake. But it wasn't fear. It wasn't sadness. It was rage. Pure, white-hot rage that I'd been swallowing for months, maybe years. Rage that had been building every time she made a snide comment about my old-fashioned taste. Every time she erased me from family photos. Every time she treated me like hired help instead of family. But I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I didn't give her the satisfaction of breaking down in front of all those people. Instead, I walked over to that pile of my memories scattered across the driveway. I bent down and picked up my music box, cradling it against my chest like I was protecting a wounded bird. The mechanism was damaged. I could feel it, but I held it tight anyway. And then I looked directly at Vanessa. I looked into those cruel, triumphant eyes, and I said, my voice steady and cold as ice, "Trash? Let's see who's really disposable here." She had no idea what those words meant. Not yet, but she would. Oh, she would. Because that was the moment I stopped being the victim. That was the moment I remembered who I really was. And Vanessa was about to learn that you should never, ever underestimate a woman who has nothing left to lose. Let me take you back 3 years. Let me show you how a woman who once commanded respect, who once shaped young minds and changed lives, ended up standing in a driveway, watching her existence get treated like garbage. My name is Margaret Hayes. For 32 years, I was a school principal, not just someone who shuffled papers and attended boring meetings. I was someone who fought for kids who had no one else fighting for them. I stood up to bullies, both the ones in the schoolyard and the ones on the school board. I created programs for struggling students, fought for better funding, championed teachers who were giving up. I was someone who mattered in this world, someone who made a difference, and I was loved. Oh God, I was loved. My husband Thomas and I had 33 years together. 33 years of laughter and arguments and making up and growing old together. We had dreams, big, beautiful dreams about retirement. We were going to travel, see all the places we'd postponed visiting because we were busy raising Ryan, building careers, being responsible adults. We had this list, 27 places we wanted to go. Italy for the art, Japan for the cherry blossoms, Ireland because Thomas's grandmother came from there, and he wanted to see her homeland. We were going to do it all. And then, one Tuesday afternoon, while I was at work reviewing budget proposals, my phone rang. It was a hospital. Thomas had collapsed at his office. Heart attack, massive. They'd tried everything. He was gone before I could even get there to say goodbye. 33 years of marriage, and I didn't get to hold his hand one last time. Didn't get to tell him I loved him. Didn't get to say thank you for every morning he brought me coffee in bed, every time he defended me when I was doubting myself, every moment he made me feel like I was the most important person in his world. He was just gone. And the grief, and God, the grief was suffocating. Our countryside home, the one we'd spent 25 years making into our sanctuary, became a tomb. Every room whispered his name. Every corner held a ghost. I couldn't cook in our kitchen without remembering him stealing bites while I prepared dinner. Couldn't sit on our porch without expecting him to come outside with 2 glasses of wine and that smile that always made everything better. I was drowning, completely, utterly drowning in loss and loneliness, in the crushing weight of knowing I'd have to figure out how to live the rest of my life without my best friend. And then Ryan called, my sweet boy, my only child, the one good thing Thomas and I created together. He told me he and Vanessa had found their dream house, a beautiful 4-bedroom in a neighborhood with good schools, close to his work, perfect for the family they wanted to start. But they were short on the down payment. The housing market was brutal. They'd been saving for years, but still couldn't bridge the gap. "Mom," he said, and I could hear the vulnerability in his voice, the hope mixed with reluctance to ask. "I hate to even bring this up, especially now, but is there any way you could help us out? I know the timing is awful, and I wouldn't ask if we had any other option." What was I supposed to say? This was my son, my baby, the boy I'd rocked to sleep, nursed through fevers, cheered at every soccer game, celebrated every achievement with tears of pride. Of course, I would help him. And honestly, part of me wanted an escape, wanted a reason to leave that house full of ghosts, wanted to believe that maybe I could build a new life, find new purpose, be useful again. So I sold it. I sold the home Thomas and I built together, the home where we'd laughed and cried and made love and raised our son, where we'd hosted Thanksgiving dinners and Christmas mornings and birthday parties, where every floorboard creaked with memory and every wall held our history. I sold all of it, and I gave Ryan and Vanessa 80% of the down payment for their dream house. 80%. I kept barely enough to cover my own basic needs, believing with every naive cell in my body that family takes care of each other, that this sacrifice would be appreciated, that I was investing in my future too, because where else would I go if not with my son? Ryan was so grateful. He hugged me and said, "Mom, you don't need to find your own place. Come live with us. We have a guest suite. It's perfect. We're family. I want you there." And Vanessa, she smiled, that warm smile that I now know was completely fake. She hugged me too and said, "Of course, Margaret. You're always welcome in our home. Our home." I should have caught that. Should have noticed she didn't say, "your home" or "my home." She said, "our home." Her and Ryan's. Never mine. But I was grieving and desperate and so lonely. I thought I'd found a lifeline. I thought I'd found a place to heal. Surrounded by family who would love me and support me through the worst time of my life. I thought I was going to be okay. I was so incredibly wrong. The first few months were wonderful. I'm not going to lie about that, even though it hurts to remember. We had dinner together every night, real family dinners where we talked and laughed and shared our days. Vanessa asked me to teach her my recipes, the ones that had been passed down through my family for generations. She seemed genuinely interested, called me Mom, and asked my advice about decorating and entertaining. Ryan and I would sit on the back porch in the evenings, talking about his childhood, laughing at old stories, connecting the way we used to before life got so complicated. He told me how happy he was that I was there, how much it meant to have family close. I helped them paint the nursery they were planning, soft yellow walls, because they wanted it to be gender neutral. I chose the curtains and found the perfect vintage rocking chair at an antique store. I imagined rocking my future grandchildren to sleep in that chair, singing them the same lullabies I'd sung to Ryan. I felt useful, wanted. Like maybe, just maybe, I could build a new life from the ashes of the old one. And then Vanessa got promoted. It was about 6 months after I moved in. She was talented, I'll give her that. Ambitious and smart and driven. Her company promoted her to senior marketing director. More money, more prestige, more responsibility, and apparently more arrogance. That's when things started to change. Slowly at first. So slowly, I almost didn't notice. Or maybe I noticed, but convinced myself I was imagining it, because I couldn't bear the thought that I'd made a terrible mistake. It started with my paintings. I'd hung some of my favorite pieces in the living room. Artwork I'd collected over the years. Pieces that meant something to me. A watercolor of the countryside, where Thomas and I honeymooned. An oil painting of a schoolhouse that reminded me of my career. Abstract pieces that I'd chosen carefully because they spoke to me. One day I came home from grocery shopping and they were gone. Just gone. Replaced by Vanessa's sleek, modern prints. Sterile black and white photographs that matched her aesthetic perfectly, but had absolutely no soul. "Oh, Margaret," she said, when I asked about it, her voice dripping with that condescending tone I would come to know so well. I was redecorating. Those old paintings didn't really fit the vibe we're going for. But don't worry, I put them in boxes in the garage for you. You can keep them in your room if they mean that much to you. My room, not the guest suite, not my space, my room, like I was a child who needed to keep her toys in her designated area. And the garage, like my artwork was broken furniture waiting to be thrown away. But I smiled. I thanked her. I told myself it was her house too, and she had a right to decorate how she wanted. I was already learning to make myself smaller. Then came the family photos. We'd taken a beautiful picture at Ryan's company holiday party. The three of us dressed up, standing together, smiling. I thought we looked like a real family. Vanessa had it printed and professionally framed, and I was so touched. I thought it was a sweet gesture, a sign that she considered me part of their unit, until I saw it on the mantel. She'd cropped me out, literally cut me out of the frame. The photo showed just her and Ryan, their faces pressed together, smiling at the camera like I'd never existed. "It fits the frame better this way," she explained when I pointed it out with shaking hands. She didn't even look up from her phone. "More balanced composition. You understand." I didn't understand. How is erasing someone's existence balanced? How is cutting out family members good composition? But I nodded. I smiled. I swallowed the hurt and told myself it didn't matter. It was just a picture. Except it wasn't just a picture. It was a message. You don't belong. You're not really part of this family. You're just someone we're tolerating. The comments about my taste became constant. Everything I liked was old-fashioned or dated or not really appropriate for a modern home. My furniture suggestions were ignored. My decorating ideas were dismissed. My attempts to contribute to conversations were met with barely concealed eye rolls. "Maybe you could keep those things in your room instead of the common areas," became Vanessa's favorite phrase. My room. Always my room. Like I was a tenant instead of family. Like I was a burden they were graciously housing instead of someone who'd given them 80% of their down payment. And Ryan, he just let it happen. Every single time. He'd look uncomfortable maybe, shift in his seat, change the subject, but he never defended me. Never told his wife to stop being cruel. never reminded her that I was his mother and deserved respect. I started spending more and more time in my room, that small guest suite that was becoming less of a haven and more of a prison. I'd lie there at night, listening to them laugh together in the living room that I'd helped pay for, and I'd wonder how I'd gotten here, how I'd gone from being a respected educator with a beautiful marriage to being an inconvenience in my own son's life. But it was about to get so much worse. You know what's worse than sudden cruelty? It's the slow erosion of your humanity. It's waking up one day and realizing you've become a servant in the house you paid for, and you can't even pinpoint exactly when it happened. The request started small, reasonable even. "Margaret, since you're home anyway, could you fold the laundry? I'm so swamped at work, and it would really help me out." Of course I agreed. I didn't mind helping. Family helps family, right? That's what I told myself. But then it became expected. The laundry appeared in a basket outside my door every morning, like clockwork. Not asked, not requested, just assumed, along with a note, "Please have this done by 5 p.m. Like I was hired help, like I was staff. Then came the kitchen incident. Oh God, the kitchen. I'd been cooking my whole life. I'd cooked for Thomas for 33 years. I'd hosted dinner parties that people talked about for months afterward. I'd made Thanksgiving dinners and Christmas feasts and birthday cakes that brought tears to people's eyes. But one morning, I was making myself breakfast. Just eggs and toast, nothing fancy. And Vanessa walked in. The look on her face, like she'd caught me doing something disgusting. Like I'd contaminated her precious space just by existing in it. "Margaret," she said, her voice sharp as a knife, "please don't touch my kitchen. I have everything organized exactly how I like it. If you want to cook, maybe you could use the microwave in your room." My room. Again, always my room. And Ryan was standing right there in the doorway, holding his coffee, watching his wife treat his mother like a pest who needed to be contained. And what did he do? He kissed Vanessa on the cheek, told her to have a great day, grabbed his keys, and left. He didn't say a word to me, didn't acknowledge what had just happened, didn't defend me or tell his wife she was being cruel. He just left. And something inside me cracked that morning. Not broke, not yet, but cracked, like ice spreading across a frozen lake. The humiliation built in layers after that, each one crushing the one beneath it, until I could barely breathe. Family dinners became torture. Vanessa would dominate the conversation, talking about her work, her colleagues, her accomplishments. Ryan would listen attentively, asking questions, praising her brilliance. And when I tried to contribute, when I tried to share something from my day, or tell a relevant story from my years as a principal, Vanessa would glance at her phone. Ryan would check his watch. The message was crystal clear. Your words don't matter. Your experiences are boring. Your presence is merely tolerated, not valued. I started eating in my room most nights. It was easier than sitting at that table, feeling like a ghost. Thanksgiving came, and I offered to help cook. I'd been making Thanksgiving dinner for 40 years. It was my specialty. My turkey was legendary. My stuffing recipe had been requested by everyone who'd ever tasted it. But Vanessa had already ordered catering from some trendy restaurant downtown. "Less stress this way," she announced cheerfully. "And besides, Margaret, you should relax. You've earned a break at your age. At my age, I was 63. Not ancient, not incompetent, just inconvenient. Christmas was even worse. I'd carefully packed away the ornaments Thomas and I had collected over 33 years of marriage. Each one told a story. The glass angel from our first Christmas in our first apartment. The wooden snowman Ryan made in 3rd grade. His name carved into the bottom in careful letters. The delicate bells from Germany that we'd bought on our anniversary trip. The ceramic nativity scene that had belonged to Thomas's mother. These weren't just decorations. They were memories. They were proof that I'd had a beautiful life once, that I'd been loved. I brought the box out, ready to help decorate the tree, ready to share the stories behind each ornament with Vanessa, hoping maybe we could bond over family history. Vanessa took one look at the box, and her nose wrinkled like she'd smelled something rotten. These are really dated, Margaret. We're going with a silver and white theme this year. Very elegant, very modern. Maybe you could decorate your room with these instead. I'm sure they'll look lovely in there. My room. I wanted to scream. I wanted to grab her by her perfectly highlighted hair and make her understand that these weren't just decorations. They were pieces of my heart. They were all I had left of Thomas, of our life together, of proof that I mattered once. But I didn't. I just nodded and carried that box back to my small guest suite, and I decorated. I hung those ornaments on a tiny artificial tree I found at a thrift store, and I cried. For the first time since that driveway incident, I cried. But I was still trying to stay quiet, still trying to keep the peace, still believing that if I just made myself small enough, agreeable enough, useful enough, maybe they'd love me again. And then came the list. I woke up one morning, opened my door to get the newspaper, and there it was, taped to my door, a to-do list written in Vanessa's perfect handwriting. Margaret's tasks for today: vacuum living room and den, clean both bathrooms, use bleach on grout, do all laundry, separate darks and lights, fold everything, grocery shopping, list on kitchen counter, pick up dry cleaning, ticket in my purse, have dinner ready by 6:30 p.m., make that chicken dish Ryan likes. I stood there, staring at that list, my hands shaking with rage and humiliation. I was a school principal. I had a master's degree in education. I commanded respect from hundreds of teachers, thousands of students, parents, superintendents. I'd been someone who mattered, and now I was being given a chore chart like a misbehaving teenager. Every instinct I had screamed at me to rip that list down, march into their bedroom, and demand an explanation, demand respect, demand to be treated like a human being instead of free labor. But I didn't, because by this point, I was afraid of conflict, afraid of being thrown out, afraid of having nowhere to go and no one to turn to, afraid of being completely, utterly alone. So I did the chores, every single one. And when Vanessa came home that evening, she didn't say, "Thank you." She walked through the house with her finger running along surfaces, checking for dust. She looked in the refrigerator at the dinner I prepared, and she said, "Good enough, I suppose. Good enough." The words burned like acid. Ryan saw it all. He had to. He lived there. He saw the lists. He saw how his wife talked to me. He saw me being erased, diminished, systematically destroyed, and he said nothing. Sometimes I'd catch him looking at me with guilt in his eyes, but guilt without action is just cowardice wearing a mask. The breaking point came on a random Tuesday afternoon. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop. I was in my room, reading, trying to escape into someone else's story, because my own had become unbearable. Their bedroom was next to mine, and the walls were thin. I heard Vanessa's voice, sharp and irritated. "I'm so tired of her being here, Ryan. Everywhere I turn, there she is, hovering, taking up space. This is supposed to be our home, our life together, and I feel like we're running a damn nursing home. A nursing home. Like I was decrepit, like I was a burden that needed managing, instead of a human being who deserved respect. She helped us buy this place, Van," Ryan said weakly. "We wouldn't have this house without her. And we've more than repaid that by housing her for 2 years. Vanessa shot back. "How much longer is this arrangement supposed to last? Until she's 90? I want our privacy back. I want to walk around my own home without worrying about offending her. I just wish she'd take the hint and move out already." Silence. That awful, damning silence that meant Ryan wasn't going to defend me, wasn't going to remind his wife that I was his mother, that I deserved respect, that I'd sacrificed everything for them. And then I heard him change the subject, talking about weekend plans like his wife hadn't just said she wished I didn't exist. I sat there in the dark, tears streaming down my face, listening to my daughter-in-law wish me away like I was an unwanted pet, and my son, my baby boy, the one I'd given everything for, let her. But here's the thing about rock bottom. Once you hit it, there's nowhere to go but up. I didn't cry myself to sleep that night. Instead, I pulled out my small leather planner, the one I'd used throughout my entire career as a principal to document everything important, meetings, conversations, incidents that needed to be remembered. And I started writing dates, times, things that were said, things that were done, every slight, every insult, every moment I was made to feel less than human in the house I'd helped purchase. My husband Thomas used to tell me, "Margaret, always keep a paper trail. Always have documentation. You never know when you'll need proof." He was right, and I was about to teach Vanessa and Ryan a lesson they would never forget. The night I remembered who I was, late one night, maybe 3 a.m. I couldn't sleep. The house was silent, except for the usual creaks and settles. Ryan and Vanessa were asleep in their bedroom, probably dreaming their perfect dreams in their perfect bed, in their perfect life that I'd made possible. I sat alone in my guest suite, my prison, and I wound up my music box, the one that would later be thrown onto the driveway like trash. Thomas's gift, our song. The mechanism was getting old, the melody a little slower than it used to be, a little softer, but it still played, still remembered, even if everyone else seemed to have forgotten. And as I listened to that familiar tune, something shifted inside me. The grief that had been suffocating me for 3 years started to transform, started to harden into something else, something clearer, something dangerous. Rage, not the hot, impulsive rage that makes you do stupid things. This was cold, calculated, the kind of rage that sharpens your mind instead of clouding it, the kind that makes you strategic instead of emotional. I opened my old leather briefcase, the one I'd carried every single day for 32 years as a principal, the one that contained every important document from my life. I hadn't really looked through it since moving in. Too painful, too many memories of who I used to be. But that night, I pulled everything out. Property documents, bank receipts, wire transfer confirmations, copies of checks, The entire paper trail of how Ryan and Vanessa's dream house came to be. And there it was, black and white, undeniable, 80%. I had provided 80% of the down payment. My name was on the deed, listed as a co-owner, not a guest, not a tenant, not some elderly relative they were graciously housing out of pity. An owner. How had I forgotten this? How had I let them rewrite reality so completely that I'd started believing I was just some burden they were tolerating out of obligation? Because I was grieving, because I was lonely, because I wanted so desperately to believe in family that I let them gaslight me into thinking I had no rights, no voice, no power, but sitting there at 3 a.m. with those documents spread across my bed, listening to my music box play Thomas's song. I remembered something crucial. I remembered who I was. I wasn't some helpless old woman grateful for scraps of kindness. I was Margaret Hayes. I was a woman who'd stood up to school board members 3 times my size and won. I was someone who'd fought for children's rights and created programs that changed lives. I was someone who'd built a career from nothing, raised a son while Thomas worked long hours, commanded respect from everyone who knew me. Vanessa didn't break me. She just made me forget myself. But I was done forgetting. My hands weren't shaking anymore. They were steady, calm, sure. I picked up my phone and scrolled through my contacts until I found Clara Henderson, my best friend for 40 years, another retired educator who knew me before grief had dimmed my light, who had seen me at my strongest and my weakest and loved me through all of it. I called her. At 3 a.m, I called her. Margaret. Her voice was thick with sleep and concern. What's wrong? Are you okay? And for the first time in years, I answered honestly. No, Clara, I'm not okay, but I'm about to be. I told her everything. The thrown belongings, the years of systematic disrespect, the overheard conversation where Vanessa called my presence a nursing home situation, the chore lists, the erasure from family photos, the slow, methodical destruction of my dignity. My voice didn't waver once. When I finished, there was a long silence on the other end. Then Clara spoke, and her voice was hard as steel. Margaret, for 32 years, I watched you teach students to stand up for themselves. You told them that silence in the face of injustice makes you complicit in your own oppression. You taught generations of young people to know their worth and demand respect. Don't you think it's time you took your own advice? Those words hit me like cold water in the face. How many times had I said exactly that to students who were being bullied? How many times had I counseled young people to stand up, speak out, refuse to be diminished? And here I was, letting myself be treated worse than I would ever have allowed a student to be treated. You're right, I whispered, and I felt something settle deep in my bones. Determination, purpose, power. Damn right I'm right, Clara said, and I could hear the fierce pride in her voice. You taught everyone else to be brave, Margaret. Now it's your turn. Time to teach one more lesson. This time, I said slowly, the classroom is my own house. Clara gave me the name of an attorney, Jennifer Martinez. Someone tough, someone who specialized in property law and family disputes, someone who, according to Clara, had never lost a case. Call her first thing in the morning, Clara said. And Margaret, make them sorry they ever underestimated you. I hung up and looked around my small guest suite. At the tiny artificial Christmas tree with Thomas's ornaments, at the boxes in the corner containing my paintings that didn't fit Vanessa's aesthetic, at the music box still playing softly on my dresser. This wasn't my prison. This was my war room, and I was about to go to war. The next morning, I got dressed in my best suit, the black one I used to wear for important school board meetings, the one that made me feel powerful and in control. I put on the pearl earrings Thomas gave me for our 25th anniversary. I did my makeup carefully, taking my time with each step. I looked in the mirror and saw someone I hadn't seen in years, someone strong, someone who mattered, someone who wasn't going to take this anymore. I saw myself. Jennifer Martinez's office was downtown, in one of those glass buildings that reflected the sky. I sat across from her, a woman in her 50s with intelligent eyes and the kind of sharp confidence that comes from winning, and I laid out everything, every document, every receipt, every email, every piece of proof showing I was an owner, not a guest. She studied the documents for 20 minutes, making notes, occasionally asking questions. When she finally looked up at me, she was smiling. Not a warm smile, a predatory smile. The smile of someone who enjoyed winning and who just realized she had an unbeatable hand. Mrs. Hayes, you have an airtight case here. You own 80% of this property. Your name is on the deed. Legally, they're living in your house more than you're living in theirs. What are my options? I asked, and my voice was steady, clear, strong. Several, she said, leaning forward. You could force a sale of the property and take your 80% of the proceeds. You could demand they buy you out at current market value, which, given the market, would be substantial. Or, she paused, and that smile widened. You could evict them. Evict them. The word hung in the air like a guillotine blade. But here's what I'd suggest, Jennifer continued. Don't warn them. Don't threaten. Just document everything that happens over the next few weeks. Every slight, every insult, every moment of disrespect. And then, when the moment is right, we serve them with official legal notice. Formal, public, undeniable. I thought about the music box on the driveway, about being erased from family photos, about chore lists and being told to use the microwave in my room, about Vanessa calling me a nursing home situation, about Ryan's silence, his cowardice, his complete failure to defend his own mother. I want to do it publicly, I said. I want witnesses. Jennifer's smile turned into something almost dangerous. When's the next family event? Vanessa's 30th birthday, I said. Dinner party in 2 weeks. She's invited 20 people. Perfect, Jennifer said. Absolutely perfect. We spent the next 2 hours going over every detail. Jennifer had her team appraise the items Vanessa had thrown onto the driveway. The hand-woven quilt my mother made, valued at $9,800. The antique music box, now damaged, valued at $7,500 before damage, with repair costs estimated at $2,000. The photographs, many irreplaceable, with estimated replacement and restoration costs in the thousands. The destruction of property alone was enough for legal action. But we weren't going for money. We were going for justice. We'll prepare a formal legal notice, Jennifer said. Notice of property ownership rights in violation of co-owner privileges. Official documentation that they're essentially tenants destroying property belonging to the primary homeowner. We'll present it at the party, in front of all her guests, and make it very clear who actually owns that house. Will it hold up? I asked. Mrs. Hayes, Jennifer said, looking me directly in the eyes. Every piece of paper, every signature, every bank statement is airtight. They have no case. None. The second they see this documentation, they'll know they've lost. I left that office feeling 20 years younger. For the first time since Thomas died, I had a purpose beyond just surviving. I wasn't a victim anymore. I was a fighter. The next 2 weeks, I played my part perfectly. I did the chores without complaint. I smiled when Vanessa made her snide comments. I stayed quiet when Ryan avoided eye contact. I was the perfect, invisible, grateful guest. But every night, I sat with my documents. I rehearsed what I would say. I imagined the look on Vanessa's face when she realized the woman, retry K continues, he'd been treating like garbage actually held all the power. Thomas used to say, "Revenge is a dish best served cold, but justice? Justice should be served publicly, so everyone learns the lesson." Vanessa was about to get an education, and this time, I was the one teaching. The birthday that changed everything, Vanessa's 30th birthday. She'd been planning it for weeks, treating it like some kind of royal coronation. I heard her on the phone constantly, coordinating every detail with the precision of a military operation. The caterer, the florist, the photographer she'd hired to capture every moment of her perfect celebration. She'd invited 20 people, colleagues from her marketing firm, Ryan's co-workers, friends from her yoga studio, her book club, everyone who mattered in her carefully curated social circle, everyone she wanted to impress. The house looked beautiful, I'll admit. She had good taste when it came to entertaining. String lights were woven through the trees in the backyard. Expensive flower arrangements sat on every surface. She'd hired caterers from that trendy farm-to-table restaurant downtown, the one with the 6-month waiting list. Everything was Instagram perfect. Everything designed to showcase her success, her beautiful home, her enviable life. I'd spent most of the day in my room as usual, but this time I wasn't hiding. I was preparing. I took a long bath, taking my time, letting the hot water soothe 3 years of tension from my muscles. I thought about Thomas, wondered what he'd say if he could see me now. I think he'd be proud. He always told me I was stronger than I gave myself credit for. I dressed in my best outfit, the navy dress I'd worn to Ryan's college graduation, the one that made me feel elegant and powerful. I put on all the good jewelry Thomas had given me over the years, the pearl earrings, the sapphire necklace from our 20th anniversary, the diamond tennis bracelet he'd surprised me with on my 50th birthday. I did my makeup carefully, taking my time with each step. I wanted to look composed, dignified, unshakable. When I finally emerged from my room at 6:30, right when guests were starting to arrive, Vanessa's face went through about 5 different expressions in 3 seconds. Surprise, confusion, annoyance, and finally, that fake smile she'd perfected. "Oh, Margaret, I didn't realize you were planning to join us tonight." The implication was clear. "You weren't invited. This isn't for you." But I just smiled. "It's a family celebration, Vanessa. Of course I'll be here." She opened her mouth, probably to suggest I eat in my room or find some other way to make myself scarce. But Ryan appeared with a tray of champagne glasses, and the moment passed. I took a glass and made my way to the dining room. The table was set beautifully. White linens, crystal glasses, candles, everywhere. Vanessa had assigned seats with little calligraphy place cards. Mine was at the far end of the table, as far from the birthday girl as possible, naturally. But I sat down without complaint, my large manila folder positioned casually on the floor beside my chair. No one paid it any attention. Why would they? Just another boring document from the old lady in the corner. If they only knew. The party was exactly what you'd expect. Vanessa held court like a queen, laughing too loudly, accepting compliments with false modesty, playing the perfect hostess. She talked about her latest marketing campaign, her upcoming promotion to VP, her plans to renovate the master bathroom in my house, using money she earned while I did her laundry and cleaned her toilets. Ryan stood by her side, the dutiful husband, laughing at her jokes, refilling her wine glass, occasionally putting his arm around her waist. He barely looked in my direction all evening. The conversations flowed around me like I was a piece of furniture. Occasionally, someone would make polite small talk, asking how I was doing, but their eyes would glaze over before I finished answering. They'd already dismissed me. Just the aging mother-in-law, lucky to be included, grateful for the scraps of attention. I smiled. I nodded. I played my part, and I waited. Dinner was served, expensive cuts of steak, roasted vegetables with some kind of fancy glaze. Artisan bread that probably cost $15 a loaf. Wine flowed freely. The conversations grew louder, more animated, more self-congratulatory. I ate quietly, barely tasting the food. My heart was pounding, but my hands were steady. Years of standing in front of school boards, delivering difficult news, handling crisis situations. They'd prepared me for this moment. Finally, the cake appeared. 3 tiers of perfection, decorated with gold leaf and fresh flowers. It probably cost more than most people spend on groceries. In a month, everyone sang happy birthday. Vanessa closed her eyes, made her wish, blew out the candles. Everyone applauded. She was glowing. This was her moment, her celebration, her triumph. Gifts were presented, designer handbags, expensive perfume, gift certificates to luxury spas, jewelry. Each gift more extravagant than the last. Vanessa opened them with exaggerated delight, squealing and hugging people, exclaiming over how generous everyone was, how she didn't deserve such wonderful friends. And then, when the last gift had been opened and everyone was settling back with their wine and cake, I stood up, slowly, deliberately, letting the movement draw attention. The conversations died down. Everyone looked at me with barely concealed surprise. The old lady was actually doing something, actually demanding attention. I walked around the table to where Vanessa sat, flushed with wine and happiness and self-satisfaction. I picked up my manila folder from beside my chair. I placed it directly in front of her. "Happy birthday, Vanessa," I said, and my voice was clear, steady, loud enough for everyone to hear, but without any trace of anger or emotion. "I got you something special this year." She looked confused, but intrigued, probably thinking it was some legal document making her life even easier. Maybe I was transferring full ownership to them. Maybe it was my will, ensuring they inherited everything. Maybe I was finally moving out, and this was my pathetic goodbye gift. Her perfectly manicured fingers opened the folder. I watched her face as she processed what she was seeing. Confusion first, then understanding, then shock, then pure, undiluted horror. The property deed, right there on top, clear as day. Margaret Hayes, 80% ownership. Ryan Patterson, 20% ownership. What is this? She asked, but her voice had lost all its confidence. Keep looking, I said calmly. Her hands shook as she flipped through the pages. Bank statements showing the wire transfer from my account, copies of the down payment check with my signature, documentation of every financial contribution I'd made to this house. Then came the appraiser's reports. The quilt she'd thrown on the driveway, valued at $9,800. The music box, now damaged, valued at $7,500, with estimated repair costs of $2,000. The photographs, estimated restoration and replacement costs, totaling over $6,000. Every single item she'd called trash, professionally appraised and documented. And finally, the legal notice from Jennifer Martinez, attorney at law. The room had gone completely silent. Everyone was watching now, sensing something significant was happening, but not quite understanding what. Vanessa's face had gone from flushed to pale in seconds. Ryan had stood up, looking between his wife and me with growing panic. I let the silence stretch, let the tension build, let everyone feel the shift in power happening right before their eyes. Then I spoke. My voice was steady, but every word landed like a hammer. You threw out memories worth more than all your jewelry combined, Vanessa. You called them trash. You said they didn't belong in your living room. I paused, looked around at all the guests, watching with wide eyes. But here's the thing. It's not your living room. It never was. This house exists because of my money, my sacrifice, my late husband's life insurance, and our life savings. I own 80% of every room, every wall, every floorboard you've been walking on while you treated me like garbage. Vanessa's mouth opened, but no sound came out. That legal notice you're holding, it's documentation that as the primary property owner, I'm formally notifying you that tenants who destroy property, who create hostile living conditions, who systematically harass co-owners, must vacate the premises. Mom, Ryan started, but I held up my hand. No, Ryan, you don't get to speak. Not now. You stood silent for 2 years, while your wife erased me from family photos, threw my belongings on the driveway, gave me chore lists like I was hired help, mocked everything I loved, and treated me like a burden. Your silence was complicity. Your cowardice was cruelty. His face crumbled. Good. Let him feel something for once. I turned back to Vanessa. You told Ryan you were tired of running a nursing home, that you wanted me to take the hint and move out, that I was taking up space in your life. Her eyes widened. She hadn't known I'd heard that. But this isn't your house, Vanessa. It's mine, and you're the one who's been taking up space in my life, consuming my peace, destroying my dignity, poisoning my relationship with my son. I picked up my music box from where I'd placed it on the side table, the one she'd thrown on the driveway, the one that was scratched and damaged, but still played if you wound it carefully. I wound it now. The melody filled the silent room, slightly off-key from the damage, but still recognizable. Our song, mine and Thomas's. This music box was a gift from my husband on our 20th anniversary. You called it trash, but it's worth more than everything on this table combined because it can't be replaced. Because it holds memories of a love you clearly know nothing about. I looked around at all the guests, their faces shocked, some looking embarrassed, others fascinated by the drama unfolding. I didn't fight to hurt anyone, I said, my voice softer now but no less powerful. I fought because I finally remembered that respect is not a favor someone grants you. It's a boundary you enforce, and I'm done allowing myself to be disrespected in my own home. I turned to leave, the music box still playing in my hands. You have 30 days to make arrangements, I said, without looking back. My attorney will be in touch. And then I walked away, through the stunned silence, past the expensive flowers and the half-eaten cake and the designer gifts, away from the life they'd tried to trap me in. The music box played softly as I climbed the stairs to my room, and for the first time in 3 years, it didn't sound like mourning. It sounded like victory. The next morning, I woke up to silence. Complete, absolute silence. No sounds of Ryan and Vanessa getting ready for work. No coffee maker brewing. No morning routine. I got dressed slowly, braced myself, and went downstairs. Vanessa was sitting at the kitchen table, still in her pajamas, her eyes red from crying. Ryan sat across from her, looking like he'd aged 10 years overnight. Empty coffee cups and used tissues littered the table. They both looked up when I entered. Vanessa's face hardened immediately, but Ryan's expression was pure devastation. "Mom," he started, his voice hoarse. "We need to talk." "No," I said calmly, pouring myself coffee. "You need to listen. I'm done talking. I've been talking for 2 years while you ignored me." "You can't just kick us out," Vanessa said, trying to regain some of her authority. "This is our home. Ryan is your son. You can't do this to family." I turned to look at her, really look at her, and I felt nothing but cold clarity. Family? You want to talk about family? Family doesn't throw someone's treasured belongings on the driveway. Family doesn't erase people from photographs. Family doesn't make someone feel like a burden for existing. "I was going to put those things back," Vanessa said weakly. "It was just a statement," I finished. "A final humiliation. One degradation too many. You wanted to break me, Vanessa. You wanted me to leave on my own so you wouldn't look like the villain. But you pushed too hard." I sat down at the table, my coffee cup steady in my hands. "Here's what's going to happen. My attorney is preparing the formal eviction notice. You have 30 days to find another place. I'll be fair about the financial aspect. You can either buy out my 80% at current market value, which you and I both know you can't afford, or I'll buy out your 20% at the same fair market rate." "That's not fair," Vanessa protested. "We've put work into this house. We've made improvements." "Which I paid for as the primary owner," I said. "Check the fine print on the deed. Any improvements or modifications are considered joint property unless otherwise specified. And they weren't otherwise specified." Ryan buried his face in his hands. "Mom, please, there has to be another way. This is our home. We have our lives here, our jobs, our friends. You should have thought about that before you let your wife treat your mother like a servant," I said, and my voice finally showed some of the pain I'd been holding back. "You should have thought about that every time you watched her humiliate me and said nothing, every time you chose her comfort over my dignity." "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I'm so sorry. I was weak. I was wrong. But please, Mom, don't do this. Let me make it right." And there it was, the apology I'd been waiting for. Too little, too late, but at least it finally came. "Ryan," I said more gently, "you're my son. I love you. I always will. But love doesn't mean accepting abuse. And what happened here What both of you allowed to happen was abuse. Systematic, calculated, emotional abuse. We'll change, Vanessa said suddenly. I'll change. I'm sorry. Margaret, I was stressed with work, and I took it out on you, and it was wrong. Please give us another chance. I looked at her for a long moment. Part of me, the part that still remembered being the lonely widow, desperate for family, wanted to believe her, wanted to accept the apology and try to rebuild. But I'd spent 2 years watching her calculated cruelty. This wasn't stress. This was who she was when she thought she had all the power. No, I said simply. You're sorry you got caught. You're sorry you lost control. But you're not sorry for how you treated me. If you were, you would have apologized months ago. Years ago. I stood up, finished my coffee, and put the cup in the sink. 30 days. My attorney will be in touch with the paperwork. I suggest you start looking for apartments. What are you going to do? Ryan asked. Are you going to stay here? Alone? No, I said, and I felt a strange lightness in my chest. I'm going to sell this house, take my 80% and start over somewhere new, somewhere without ghosts and bad memories, somewhere I can breathe again. But where will you go? He asked, and he sounded like a little boy again, scared and lost. I don't know yet, I admitted, but wherever it is, it will be mine, truly mine, not a guest suite, not a space I have to apologize for occupying. Mine. I started to leave the kitchen, then paused and turned back. Ryan, you're still my son. That doesn't change. But our relationship, that needs to be rebuilt from scratch, based on mutual respect, not obligation or guilt. When you're ready to do that work, real work, not just apologies, call me. But until then, I need distance. I left them there, sitting in the ruins of the kingdom they'd built on my money and my pain. Over the next few days, things moved quickly. Jennifer had the eviction paperwork processed with remarkable efficiency. Vanessa tried to fight it, hired her own attorney, but every single document was airtight. Every signature was legal. Every bank statement was irrefutable. They had no case. They never had a case. I watched them pack with a strange mixture of satisfaction and sadness. This was my son, the baby I'd rocked to sleep and nursed through fevers and celebrated every milestone of. Watching him box up his life felt like a failure somehow, even though I knew intellectually this was his failure, not mine. Vanessa wouldn't look at me, which was fine. I had nothing left to say to her anyway. But the day before they moved out, Ryan came to my room. He knocked softly, like he used to when he was young and had a bad dream and needed comfort. Can I come in? I nodded, and he sat on the edge of my bed, looking at his hands. I failed you, he said finally, as a son, as a man, as a decent human being. I knew what she was doing, and I let it happen because it was easier than fighting, because I was a coward. I didn't argue. It was all true. I don't know if you can ever forgive me, he continued. I don't know if I deserve forgiveness, but I want you to know that I see it now. I see what I allowed to happen, and I'm ashamed. Good, I said, and he flinched. You should be ashamed, Ryan. You should carry that shame until you learn from it, until you become someone who stands up for people instead of watching them suffer. I'll do better, he said. I'll be better. I promise. Don't promise me, I said. Show me, through your actions, through how you treat people, through the choices you make going forward. He nodded, tears streaming down his face. I love you, Mom. I know you do, I said. But son, love is more than a feeling. Love is action. Love is protection. Love is standing up for someone even when it's uncomfortable. You need to learn that. He left my room looking like he'd been hollowed out. Good. Maybe being hollow would leave room for growth. 3 days after they moved out, to a small apartment across town that Vanessa clearly hated, judging by her social media posts, I got a call from Clara. "How are you holding up?" she asked. "I'm okay," I said, and I meant it. Better than okay. I feel lighter, Clara, like I can breathe again. Good, because I have a proposition for you. I listened as she explained. Her daughter Emma, recently widowed with a 10-year-old girl, was struggling. She needed a place to stay while she got back on her feet. Clara had thought about having them move in with her, but her apartment was tiny. "Would you consider renting out the upper floor?" Clara asked. "Just temporarily, until Emma finds her footing." She's kind, Margaret. Respectful. Her daughter Sophie is a sweetheart. And honestly, I think you might enjoy having people around who actually appreciate you. I thought about it, about filling this house with different energy, about the sound of a child's laughter instead of Vanessa's cutting remarks. "Yes," I said. "Tell Emma she's welcome here." A week later, Emma and Sophie moved in. Emma was gentle and kind, always asking before using anything, always expressing gratitude. Sophie was bright and curious, reminding me of the students I used to teach. The first evening, Sophie saw my damaged music box on the mantel. "What's that?" she asked, her eyes wide with interest. "It's a music box," I said. "It plays a special song, though it's a little broken now. Can I hear it?" I wound it carefully, and the slightly off-key melody filled the room. Sophie listened with her eyes closed, swaying slightly. "It sounds like it's been through something hard," she said when it finished, "but it's still beautiful. Out of the mouths of children." "Yes," I said, smiling at her wisdom. "Yes, it has, and yes, it is." That night, I sat in my living room, truly my living room now, and listened to Emma and Sophie laughing upstairs. The house felt different, warm again, like it was healing, just like I was. I picked up my music box and wound it one more time. The melody played, damaged but persistent, off-key but determined, just like me. 2 months later, I sat in a small cafe downtown meeting with a real estate agent. I decided to sell the house, not out of bitterness or pain, but because I realized I didn't want to live in a space that held so much hurt, even if I'd reclaimed it. Emma had already found a good job and a lovely apartment. She and Sophie were doing well, and watching her rebuild her life had given me hope for rebuilding my own. The house sold quickly. Good neighborhood, good schools, good bones. I made a significant profit on my 80%. More than enough to start completely fresh. Ryan called me every week. We met for coffee sometimes. Awkward conversations where he tried to prove he was changing. Vanessa wasn't with him. They were separated. Apparently, once she couldn't blame me for their problems, she'd started blaming Ryan for everything else. Turns out she was just cruel, and removing me from the equation didn't fix that. I didn't feel satisfaction at their separation, just sadness for the time we'd all wasted. But here's the thing I learned. You can't heal in the same place that hurt you. You can't grow in soil that's toxic. Sometimes you have to burn everything down and start completely new. So that's what I did. I bought a small apartment in a neighborhood I'd always loved. 2 bedrooms, one for me, one for a home office where I was starting to write. Turns out, I had a lot of stories to tell about education, about grief, about finding yourself after you've been erased. The apartment had a balcony that overlooked a small park. Every morning, I'd sit there with my coffee and watch children play. Their laughter was the best kind of medicine. I reconnected with old friends from my teaching days, started volunteering at a local literacy program, began to remember who Margaret Hayes was before grief and betrayal had dimmed her light. And slowly, painfully, beautifully, I healed. The music box sat on my mantel in my new home. I'd had it professionally repaired. It played perfectly now, the melody clear and true, but I kept it as it was when I first got it back, slightly damaged, a little off-key, because those imperfections told a story, my story, of surviving, of fighting back, of reclaiming power. Ryan and I were rebuilding our relationship slowly, very slowly. Some weeks were good. Some weeks he said something that revealed he still didn't fully understand what had happened, and I'd have to create distance again. But there was hope, small, fragile hope, that maybe someday we'd have a real relationship again. One based on mutual respect instead of guilt or obligation. Vanessa sent me an email once, a long, rambling thing about how she'd been seeing a therapist and realized she'd acted out of insecurity and fear, how she was sorry, how she hoped I could forgive her someday. I read it once and deleted it, not out of cruelty, but because I realized I didn't need her apology anymore. I'd already freed myself from caring what she thought about me. Forgiveness isn't always about reconciliation. Sometimes it's just about releasing the poison so it stops hurting you. 6 months after everything happened, Clara came to visit my new apartment. We sat on my balcony drinking tea, watching the sun set over the park. "You did it," she said, squeezing my hand. "You got yourself back." "I did," I agreed. "It wasn't easy. It still isn't easy. But I'm me again." "You're more than you again," Clara corrected. "You're stronger than before. You survived losing Thomas, survived betrayal, survived having your dignity stripped away, and you still stood up, still fought back. That takes courage most people never have to find." I thought about that, about the woman who stood in that driveway watching her memories get thrown away, about how small I'd felt, how broken. And then I thought about the woman who placed that folder on Vanessa's birthday table, who reclaimed her power in front of 20 witnesses, who chose herself even when it meant losing her son temporarily. "You know what I learned," I said to Clara. "Silence isn't always weakness. Sometimes silence is strategy. Sometimes you stay quiet because you're gathering your strength, collecting your evidence, waiting for exactly the right moment to speak." Clara smiled. "That's the most important lesson you ever taught." I'm sitting here now, in my small apartment that's truly mine, sipping tea and watching children play in the park below. The evening light is golden, making everything look soft and forgiving. My music box sits on the mantel, playing softly. That melody that once reminded me only of loss now reminds me of strength, of survival, of the fact that something can be broken and still be beautiful, still be valuable, still be worth keeping. I think about everything that happened, the pain, the humiliation, the systematic erasure of my identity, and I realize something important. I didn't fight to hurt anyone. That was never the goal. I fought to remind them, to remind myself, that respect is not a favor someone grants you when they're feeling generous. Respect is a boundary you enforce, a line you draw and defend no matter who tries to cross it. For 2 years, I let them cross every single line. I let them erase me, diminish me, treat me like I was disposable. And I did it because I was grieving, because I was lonely, because I wanted desperately to believe in family, in love, in second chances. But here's what I understand now. Real family doesn't require you to erase yourself to exist. Real love doesn't demand you become smaller so someone else can feel bigger. Real belonging doesn't come with a list of conditions where your worth is constantly being evaluated and found lacking. I am 63 years old. I'm a widow. I'm a retired educator. I am someone who lost everything and had to rebuild from nothing. And I'm done apologizing for taking up space in this world. I am done making myself smaller to accommodate other people's comfort. I'm done silencing myself to keep the peace. I'm done accepting crumbs of affection from people who should be offering me full plates of love and respect. If sharing my story does anything, I hope it does this. I hope it reminds someone out there who's being diminished, who's being erased, who's being treated like they're disposable. You're not. You matter. Your dignity matters. Your peace matters. And you have the right to fight for it. Never mistake silence for weakness. Sometimes silence is just someone choosing the right moment to speak. Sometimes silence is gathering evidence. Sometimes silence is strategic patience before justice. And when you do speak, speak with clarity. Speak with evidence. Speak with the unshakable knowledge that you deserve respect, not because someone chooses to give it to you, but because you're a human being and respect is your birthright. I could have stayed. I could have accepted Vanessa's half-hearted apology and Ryan's guilty promises and tried to make it work. I could have continued living in that guest suite, doing those chores, accepting those slights, making myself smaller and smaller until I disappeared completely. But I didn't, because I finally remembered something crucial. I'd spent 32 years teaching young people to stand up for themselves, to know their worth, to refuse to be diminished. It was time I took my own advice. The children in the park below are leaving now, called home by parents for dinner. Their laughter fades, but the joy lingers in the air. Tomorrow they'll be back, playing and laughing and being beautifully, unapologetically themselves. That's what I want for my final chapter too. To be beautifully, unapologetically myself. Not someone's burden, not someone's servant, not someone who has to earn the right to exist in peace. Just Margaret Hayes, flawed, scarred, damaged like my music box, but still playing, still here, still valuable. Have you ever been disrespected by the very people you helped? Have you ever sacrificed everything only to be treated like nothing? Have you ever stayed silent while your dignity was stripped away piece by piece because you were afraid of being alone? I see you. I was you. And I want you to know, it's not too late to stand up. It's not too late to draw boundaries. It's not too late to choose yourself, even if it means disappointing people who've been comfortable with you staying small. Your peace matters more than their comfort. Your dignity matters more than their convenience. Your worth is not determined by how useful you are to people who don't appreciate you. Tell me where you're watching from. Tell me if this story resonated with you. Share it with someone who needs to hear that silence doesn't mean weakness. It just means they're choosing the right moment to roar. Because every silent fighter needs to know your voice still matters. Your story still matters. You still matter. And when you're ready, when you've gathered your evidence, strengthened your resolve, and chosen your moment, speak. Speak clearly. Speak powerfully. Speak with the unshakable knowledge that you deserve respect. And then, stand in the truth of your worth and don't apologize for taking up space in a world that would prefer you stay small. I'm Margaret Hayes. I'm 63 years old. I've been broken and rebuilt, and I'm finally free.